Next, for Jose Mateo, dance is much more than performance. It's a language, it's community building, and even a tool for social justice, he says. He should know. The Cuban-born dancer and choreographer is now in the midst of celebrating his dance company's 30th anniversary. We'll talk to him in a moment, but first, here's a look at Jose Mateo Ballet Theater's newest production, Hearts Disguised. Jose Mateo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
Congratulations on your 30th anniversary.
Thank you.
I mean, you really have devoted your life to dance.
Well, I don't know that I would have guessed that I would one day be directing a ballet company and choreographing so consistently. I don't know that I had formulated a vision per se in the beginning. I was doing what I thought I should be doing then. And then ended up creating a model for a ballet organization that's quite different from most, so it would have been impossible to have described it. But you don't find too many companies where there's one person continually choreographing. And so I think that's been the most exhausting part, is just coming up with work after work.
Well, I'm wondering that under the guise of Hearts Disguised, and this is a piece of your pieces about human relationships and love and interaction. So I'm wondering, how do those ideas germinate? Are you out there in the world studying people?
Well, I think I am, actually, though I don't know that you consciously do that in order to provide yourself material for your work. But I do find myself doing that constantly, just observing people. And I think most of us who work in theater, on stages, tend to observe life a little bit more, perhaps, than most people.
So what are some of those dynamics that we see you translate into dance form?
There's betrayal and anger and suspicion and all of these different things that can characterize a relationship. And my hope is that in putting it on stage, in dance, where there are no words, there is no script, you can somehow connect with your audience by showing them something that is intangible but familiar to them. And so I'd like to think that our audiences kind of sense that this is really about them and things they've experienced.
You've had a move for social justice through dance. How does that become a tool?
We do it a little bit more directly through these programs of Dance for World Community. The centerpiece of that initiative is the Dance for World Community Festival. It's an indoor-outdoor festival that we present, where we present around 80 dance groups in the area to do what they do. We have many people that have never come to see our own ballet company, but are motivated to come out on that day and see all sorts of different kinds of dance. The premise behind that initiative is that we're all dancers.
Are we?
I believe we are, and I genuinely believe we are. And not just different forms of dance, but different ways of expressing that dance.
Or if you're me who just sways in the corner.
That's a form of dance. That definitely is a form of dance, and you're integrating your whole body into an experience that most often is motivated by music or something rhythmic.
Let me just ask you, you are Cuban-born, you spent your early childhood in Cuba. Obviously, there's so much changing there right now. The president was just in Cuba. What do you see happening for the arts in Cuba right now as things begin to open up and artists who haven't really had exposure, a lot of international exposure, certainly to the U.S., suddenly have it?
Cuba happens to be one of those countries that is actually has music and dance that gets international exposure, and the people on the island get a lot of exposure to a lot of different dance and music from a lot of different places and different cultures already. They've been missing the American component, and so they're aware that there's so much that happens here that they're not privy to, and there's so much that we're missing from Cuba. The last program we did, which was entitled The Cuba Files, was intended to bring music that we don't hear, music from Cuba that we don't hear too often, and present American dance to it.
Because arts is so prevalent there, do you feel that it was ingrained in you, having been born there and to Cuban parents?
I really think, in a way, yes. I think we grew up with music and dance. I personally didn't see it as anything unusual because it seemed that everyone did. But that is, in part, where that belief that we are all dancers comes from, because I come from a culture where that is true.
Well, Jose Mateo, thank you so much. Hearts to Skies starts this weekend, goes through April 17th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Now to St. Louis, Missouri, where we meet the 442s.